Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the next edition of the Vet Method podcast, where we bring team training concepts to independent veterinary practice owners who want to grow revenues through a high-performance team. My name is Sanjay Mangabai, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Phil Zeltzman. Hi, Phil. Welcome.
Hi, Sanjay. How are you?
Very well. Thank you, Phil. And you?
Wonderful.
Good. So whereabouts are you today?
Pennsylvania, USA.
Okay.
Near the East Coast.
Ah, fantastic. So you're probably about 3 or 4 hours behind us. It's kind of 7 in the evening over here.
5 hours.
5 hours. Fantastic.
For those who listen to your podcast faithfully, I'm a personal friend and I live very close to Tracy Sands.
Ah, okay. Fantastic. I have a podcast that I've done recently with Tracy. Yeah, fantastic. So a little bit about Phil. Phil Zeltzman is a board-certified veterinary surgeon and a serial entrepreneur in Pennsylvania. He's the co-founder of Veterinary Financial Summit, an online community and conference that is dedicated to personal and practice finance. So the title of the podcast is How to Retire Before You Turn 90. And we're going to talk about that for the next 7 minutes or so. Okay, Phil, our time starts now. So question number 1, who is your ideal client?
Our ideal client, so to speak, is any veterinary professional who has an interest in anything financial, whether it be personal finance or practice finance. Mm-hmm. The sad reality is that this is not something that anybody teaches readily. Mm-hmm. So my co-founder, Dr. Meredith Jones, and I felt the need to share our passion with our colleagues who seemingly need a lot of help because there's nobody else out there to help us.
Absolutely. So it's basically anyone in the profession, really. Anyone who's especially now thinking about finances and needs to maybe prioritize those finances. And what you say is very true. You know, I qualified and then I always wanted to open a practice, but no one ever taught you, one, the business of a veterinary practice. And then no one teaches you about personal finance. So, worked hard, etc., etc. And then you kind of stumble across these things. So yeah, I'm really happy that you're teaching people how to do that. Perfect. So that leads us nicely on to question number 2. What's the biggest problem your clients face and how would you help them solve it?
So on the personal side, we help them make sense of the different moving parts, between personal debt, buying a home, saving for retirement, all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then if that's not enough, some of us are interested in practice ownership. Mm-hmm. In the US, most people have a ridiculous amount of student debt. Mm-hmm. So all these things compound and it makes it very difficult to survive.
Okay, so that's their biggest problem, the fact that they have all this debt that starts actually while they're at university, and then obviously they carry that into their working life and they're almost struggling before they begin, in a way. And
absolutely.
And then managing that minefield of debt and income, etc., etc. Okay, fantastic. Great. Question number 3. What are the typical symptoms that people experience with that problem? Their pain points.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there's a number of pain points. Multiple studies show that financial concerns are at the top of the list for our colleagues. Mm-hmm. So the symptoms range, it depends from person to person. It depends on their personal history, their personal situation. Mm-hmm. Many of them are completely lost. They don't know what to do. They don't know who to turn to. They don't know who to trust.
Okay.
Because, obviously, if you trust the wrong person, it can cost you a whole lot more money and a lot of time. So there's no question, again, based on those multiple studies, it generates a lot of anxiety. Some are affected more than others, and some are depressed. I mean, when you see the numbers, it can be quite depressing to figure out what to do. Others regret their decision to become a vet.
Absolutely.
Which is really sad, because as hard as it is and as stressed as everybody is currently, I think it's the best profession in the universe. So I think overall there's a lot of fear, a lot of helplessness in our profession. And again, I think the problem is even worse in the US because of the burden of student debt.
Absolutely. So you touched a few important points here. What I'm hearing is this feeling of probably being overwhelmed. You mentioned anxiety, being anxious. It's a hard enough profession anyway, especially at the beginning. You have all these worries about whether you're going to do well in your job or not, and all that comes with that. And then at the back of your mind, you've got this financial burden, and which, as we said before, starts at day one, but then it's there and it's accumulating, and I think it compounds things. The other anxieties of the profession, managing time, thinking about the cases, etc., etc. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that, Phil. So question number 4: what are the common mistakes people make when trying to solve their problem? The things that they thought were going to work, but in reality were never going to. The things they try, but fail.
There's many mistakes that can be made, and again, it varies from person to person. Certainly one big mistake would be to do nothing. In the US, we call it the white knight syndrome. People wait for a magical night to solve all their problems and their lives. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen very often. It does in movies, but not in real life. I think that and I don't want to be too specific, but I think in many cases, people, without naming any specific gender, tend to rely on their spouse to handle finances.
Okay.
And sometimes it's the right choice, sometimes it's the wrong choice. But that is not something I think should be delegated. I think it should be decisions should be made together, and it should be an opportunity to learn, not to abdicate the responsibility. Another mistake is not, related to that, is not educating oneself. Again, nobody teaches those skills in school, on the personal side or the practice side. And to some degree, do you really want schools to teach personal finance? I'm not really sure we do. So it's on us. It falls on us to be responsible and grow up and learn that. Many people think it's boring. Obviously, I think it's very exciting and interesting. Basically, your life depends on it. So it's really important.
Yeah.
And yet another mistake is to believe, to trust the wrong person. There's many gurus, self-proclaimed or not, who may deliver very bad advice that can be extremely harmful. So that goes back to educating yourself. Having the tools to judge what you hear and what you read before you make a decision, and you entrust somebody with your money and your financial decisions.
Yeah, that's so important. I wish someone had sat me down early on and had that exact conversation, because you're quite right. The white knight that you hope is coming isn't coming. Yeah, nobody's coming to save you unless you win the lottery or do something like that.
And even that is often a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Absolutely. So and stop procrastinating. Stop thinking that it's a problem in the future and somehow things are going to work out somehow, and maybe your spouse is going to help solve all those issues, etc. So
thank you. That's a great one.
Yeah. And also you talked about trust. There's so many books out there. There's so many financial consultants and people who are claiming to look after your best interests, is what I'm hearing you saying. But you've got to be able to discriminate between who to trust and who not to, what's good information and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then listen when you find the right information, when you find the right person.
Yeah. And if I can suggest one more, I think that having too many goals at the same time leads to confusion. So in other words, whatever kind of debt you have, whether it be student debt or practice debt or equipment debt or a mortgage or a car or saving for retirement, saving for a vacation, helping your family, there's so many things to do at the same time. I mean, that is enough to stick your head in the sand. So again, it goes back to educating yourself so that you can make choices in the right order.
Absolutely. So it's a matter of creating those priorities also. Sorting out which debt needs to get sorted out first, etc., etc. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's really, really, really useful, Phil. Thank you. Question number 5. What is one valuable free action that someone listening to this can implement that will help them solve that problem?
You said 1. Am I allowed 2?
You're allowed as many as you want, actually.
So, well, the easiest thing, if some of our listeners really can't afford a book or an audiobook, use libraries. They're maybe less used than they used to be in the good old days. But any decent library will have a number of financial books, paper, something you can touch, or even audiobooks. So you can literally educate yourself while commuting to work or while exercising. I mean, these books have shaped lives and have helped so many people. There's so many classic books that I feel strongly people should read or listen to. And then, call me biased, but we have a podcast, the Veterinary Financial Podcast. It's a totally free resource and it's available anywhere in the world.
Absolutely. And more importantly, like you said, it's a resource that you can trust. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we try to be extremely objective about what we say. We don't preach. There's no dogma.
Yeah.
And we invite experts to share their knowledge so we can educate our listeners.
Yeah, fantastic. And so you mentioned books and libraries, and if I may, I'd like to suggest, a book that changed my outlook fairly recently was from a guy called Ramit Sethi. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And the main thing I got from that, one of them, was that, it's okay to spend money on the things you like and spend less money on the things that don't matter. So, if a cup of coffee really matters to you, buy a good one. Yeah, I think he called it conscious spending or something. And he also taught about automating your expenses, having it come automatically out of your account so that, maybe 10% went into a savings account that you don't touch. So you knew all the different pots. That was really valuable. So you're right about finding the right resource. And for me personally, that was a good resource. Great.
Yeah, we both Meredith and I have followed Ramit for years.
Okay.
I have actually an autographed copy of the second edition of the book.
Yeah.
He is one person I would absolutely trust.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, let's go to question number 6. Only 2 questions to go. What's one valuable resource that you can direct people to that will further help with that problem? So I think we touched on that, really, but is anything else?
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, the podcast is a free source of information. We also have a blog that we publish about a variety of topics, both on the personal side and the practice side. But it goes beyond that. It goes into mindset and success and time management and so on and so forth. So it's a pretty wide variety of topics that we deal with, and that's available for free on our website, which is vetfinancialsummit.com.
Fantastic. Okay, so it's all on your website, and yeah, easy to access.
Yeah. And actually, even better, if somebody subscribes to the blog, they get a free ebook.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And finally, question number 7. What's the one question, Phil, that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Well, again, call me biased, but we do have a conference. It's called the Vet Financial Summit. The summit is once a year in September. We were hoping to have it as a physical conference in the US. Thanks to our best friend COVID, it was virtual last year, and it'll be virtual again this year on September 18 and 19. So the beauty of it is that it's accessible from anywhere in the world because it is virtual, and it's very affordable. I think the important thing is to surround yourself with like-minded people who have your best interest at heart, because as you're in a community, it's much easier to help each other as you get to know each other. The famous expression, you need to know, like, and trust people.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of culture we like to nurture in our community, so that people can help each other.
Absolutely. So that's really a really important point. So the conference is a good place to go and meet people who are thinking about the same things. And you often realize that we have much more in common than our differences. So people are struggling with the same issues. Most veterinary students, most veterinary practice owners, most vets will have some financial anxieties, depending on their circumstances. And it's nice to know that you're not alone, and that people are. Certainly, I was afraid to let people know about my financial difficulties, because it's kind of almost an embarrassing thing to admit. You're a professional person, you're working, you own a practice even, and yet it's hard to meet payroll at the end of the month. And that's hard to admit, firstly to yourself sometimes, and then to others. But when you realize that actually everyone struggles with the same things, and you can start to find solutions to those problems. So that's really a good point, Phil. Thank you. Meeting up with people and talking about it.
And you made a very good point. This is universal. The nationality and your background are somewhat irrelevant. Last year, it was pretty fascinating that we had participants in the summit from, obviously, mostly the US and Canada, but we had some from the UK and Cyprus and South Africa. We speak the same language, we have the same problem, we have the same struggles. Again, our culture is extremely important to us, so there's no shaming, there's no blaming. We're here for a common goal, which is to get better and to help each other. So that's exactly what we accomplish. And I should also say that we do have a community. That part is free for anybody who attends the conference, because we didn't want to have a conference like 99.9% of conferences, and then you're on your own.
Yeah.
That's not what we do. We want to continue to help people year-round, so that the community is accessible for a year beyond the conference. Yeah,
absolutely. And you get a chance to actually implement what you learn, rather than just kind of, forget about it. Wow, exactly. Thanks, Will. That was really, really interesting, and I feel very helpful. It's obvious to see that you have a passion about personal finance, and you're definitely fulfilling your mission to help people retire before 90. I'm sure that our listeners, myself included, will take away some really valuable insights and resources, Phil. It just remains for me to say thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic.